Hi, good morning, good afternoon to everyone. Welcome to the PhD session of the IATE Tourism in Focus Research Series. This session today is very important, not only because it allows to share work and insight from our community, but especially because it brings some fresh idea, new perspective from your future colleagues. So today we have two presentations from our PhD students. Here are the rules. So each presentation will last 20 minutes. And then after each one, we will have a round of questions. But please feel free to use the chat if you wish to submit question, or of course, if you prefer, you can turn on your microphone and directly ask the question to the speaker. So before we get started, just a quick reminder, the deadline for the IAT conference in beautiful Palermo is going to approach. It's very soon, the 12th of this month. So don't forget to submit your abstract on time. So let's get started. We start with Daniela Castillo. Daniela Castillo is a PhD student in economics at the Faculty of Economics of the University of Coimbra in Portugal. Her research interests focus on tourism economics, and her work explore the role of tourism-related investment in the sustainable development of the European Union countries. Despite she's very young, she has already a track of publications in journals such as the Socioeconomic Planning Science, Global Business and Economics Review, Journal of Policy Research in Tourism, Leisure and Events, so on and so forth. So, Daniela, you have 20 minutes. You can share your screen, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Professor Veronica. Good afternoon to all. I will share my screen. Are you seeing what I'm sharing?
Perfect.
So, as I said, good afternoon. First, let me express my gratitude for the opportunity to share a segment of my PhD research at the International Association for Tourism Economics seminars. My name is Daniela Castilho. I'm a PhD student at the Faculty of Economics of the University of Coimbra, and I'm here to present the working paper that I'm developing jointly with Professor José Alberto Fuinhas, Professor Italo Argulo, and Professor Javier Maqueira, titled Is Tourism Capital Investment a Driver of Renewable Energy Consumption? Insights from European Union countries. As I said, this is a working paper in an early stage of research. Therefore, we are fully available to receive your suggestions or comments to improve the quality of this investigation. In the European Union, the tourism sector plays a significant economic role, contributing about 10.5% to its economy and supporting approximately 12 million jobs. And it is expected to continue to grow, with projections indicating the creation of 4.5 million additional jobs by 2035. Despite this strong contribution, it is also well recognized that the tourism industry needs a substantial amount of energy to sustain its services, mainly sourced from fossil fuels, which turns the sector also a significant contributor to climate change. Especially in regions such as the European Union, strongly committed to accelerating energy transition and which nearly tripled the consumption of renewable energy from 2004 to 2023, there is an increasing pressure to improve the sector's energy sustainability. And a possible solution to achieve that is if tourism-associated activities are designed to incorporate renewable energy. However, to reach such a transformation, tourism investments are required. This is because the adoption of clean energy is contingent upon the advancement of technology. Moreover, increasing tourism investments may support the integration of renewable energy sources in the construction and operation of related infrastructures, which not only improves environmental quality, but also allows tourism enterprises to reduce operational costs, generate employment, and strengthen destination attractiveness. Despite these benefits, the relationship between tourism investments and renewable energy remain underexplored. And this gap motivates the main research question of this study, which is, are tourism-related investments driving renewable energy consumption in the European Union? Moving on to the literature review, we can start by saying that the relationship between tourism and energy or environmental indicators is widely studied. But as you can observe in Table 1, the results are far from being consensual. And the disparity in the results may have several reasons, such as the countries or the time span used, as well as the methodological techniques employed. Especially for the European Union, seems to have a predominance of a negative relationship between tourism and environmental degradation. For instance, Lee concluded that tourism receipts have a negative effect on CO2 emissions in the European Union. And following a similar approach, Paramati also studied the relationship between tourism and CO2 emissions, but focusing on the role of tourism capital investment. According to their estimations, it decreases CO2 emissions in this region. The negative relationship exhibited in the European Union might be related to the state of transition from fossil fuels to renewable energy. In fact, prior research argued that in nations or regions focused on this shift, tourism indirectly decreases environmental degradation through the inclusion of renewable energy sources in its activities. Despite that, there is a limited number of studies that empirically address the linkage between tourism and renewable energy consumption and predominantly focus on causality dynamics. From Table 2, and to our best knowledge, Leighton and Lorente were the only authors establishing a relationship between tourism and renewable energy consumption in the European Union using a causality methodology. And they found that a bidirectional relationship exists between tourist arrivals and renewable energy consumption in the European Union. However, their study only covers up to the year of 2014, relies on tourist arrivals to represent the sector, and uses a causality methodology. Therefore, we aim to conduct an impact analysis using both an ordinary least squares with fixed effects and a panel quantile regression, and instead of using the most common indicators, such as tourist arrivals or tourism receipts, we will consider tourism capital investment as the interest variable. This is because tourism capital investment seems to be an important component for sustainable development, and as proved by Paramati, it mitigates CO2 emissions in the European Union nations. To accomplish the goals of this investigation, a panel of 25 European Union countries was used for the time period from 1995 to 2021, with the selection criteria for both being data availability. Table 3 describes the variables that were used in this study. The dependent variable will be the renewable energy consumption. The main interest variable, the capital investment in travel and tourism, used to represent the gross fixed capital formation of the sector. As control variables, selected according to prior literature, we used the Financial Development Index, urban population, labor force, and industry. In addition, a set of dummy variables were also included in our estimations. THS and TLS were calculated using the variable travel and tourism's total contribution to gross domestic product. THS denotes the highly specialized countries in tourism, and TLS represents the least tourism specialized nations. Both dummies were used to calculate a set of interaction terms, which allow us to analyze how tourism specialization may influence the relationship between tourism capital investment and renewable energy consumption. Concerning the time dummies, D2008 and D2020 were added to control for the consequences of the financial crisis of 2008 and the COVID-19 pandemic, respectively. Finally, the total population was used to transform the variable capital investment in travel and tourism into per capita values. The effects of tourism capital investment on renewable energy consumption will be tested using an ordinary least squares with fixed effects. This methodology was chosen mainly due to its ability to control for unobserved time-invariant country-specific characteristics. More precisely, as can be seen in equation 1, it includes in the regression an unobserved component, in this case denoted by mu, which avoid bias in the relationship between tourism capital investment and renewable energy consumption. However, it also presents some disadvantages, namely the strong sensitivity to outliers or the inability to capture shifts affecting areas of the distribution behind the mean. To validate the use of this methodology, a battery of preliminary and specification tests was conducted. The preliminary tests include the cross-sectional dependence test, which revealed that cross-sectional dependence is present in all variables. The SIPS test, which is robust in the presence of cross-sectional dependence in the variables and checks their stationarity, with the outcomes revealing that only renewable energy consumption, capital investment in travel and tourism, financial development index, and industry are stationary. Therefore, due to the presence of non-stationary variables, namely the urban population and the labor force, and to avoid spurious regression, both Westerland and Pedroni co-integration tests were conducted and revealed that co-integration is present, meaning that we can proceed with our estimations. Finally, the matrix of correlation and the variance inflection factor tests were carried out. The low values of these tests reveal that neither correlation nor multicollinearity represent a concern to our estimations. Regarding the specification tests, in this case were conducted the Hausmann test, which revealed that fixed effects are present, the modified Wald test, which indicate the presence of heterospecificity, the Pesaran test, which indicate the existence of contemporaneous correlation, and finally, the Wood-Reed test, which confirmed the presence of first-order autocorrelation. Due to the presence of these three disturbances and the existence of cross-sectional dependence in all variables, the disc-occur estimator was used to perform OLES with fixed effects. This is because disc-occur estimator produces standard errors robust to these disturbances. Table 5 presents the outcomes of the ordinary least squares with fixed effects, the main methodology used in this study. And as can be observed in Table 5, three different specifications were conducted. Model 1 regresses tourism capital investment and the control variables as influencing factors of renewable energy consumption. Model 2 is extended to include a set of interaction terms which allow us to analyze how tourism specialization influences the impacts of tourism capital investment on renewable energy consumption. And Model 3 adds two time dummies to the specification of Model 2, since, as I said, OLES is substantially affected by outliers. Concerning the influence of the control variables, namely the financial development index, urban population, labor force, and industry, they are all statistically significant. However, while financial development index, urban population, and labor force proved to be drivers of renewable energy consumption in the European Union, industry seems to act as a barrier to improve it. And these results are in accordance with prior literature. When it comes to the effects of the main interest variable, the capital investment in travel and tourism, denoted by the acronym LCIPC in Table 5, it proved to have a statistically significant and positive effect on renewable energy consumption in the European Union. And also, existing literature has not empirically investigated the impacts of this indicator on renewable energy consumption. Authors such as Paramati or Denish and Wang provide related evidence. demonstrating the ability of tourism capital investment to decrease CO2 emissions. Lastly, the multiplicative terms, meaning the interaction between tourism high specialization and tourism capital investment, and the interaction between tourism low specialization and tourism capital investment, they show opposite signs. More precisely, THS-LCIPC increases renewable energy consumption, while TLS-LCIPC seems to reduce it. This means that the effects of tourism capital investment on renewable energy consumption in the European Union are affected by the level of specialization in tourism. More precisely, the effects of tourism capital investment are more pronounced in highly tourism specialized nations. The robustness check methodology chosen was the panel quantile regression. This method overcomes the main disadvantages of the ordinary least squares with fixed effects, namely due its ability to capture shifts affecting areas of the distribution behind the mean and being robust to the presence of outliers. Moreover, it is also robust to the presence of non-normal distributed data. Therefore, to ensure the validity of our previous findings and to examine whether the effects of tourism capital investment on renewable energy consumption varies across countries, we used a method of moments quantile regression with fixed effects. This method was introduced by Machado and Santos Silva, and in addition to the traditional panel quantile regression advantages, it captures the unobserved heterogeneity across nations by enabling the individual effects to influence the entire distribution, not just shifting averages. To validate the use of this methodology, two additional preliminary tests were performed, namely the squamous kurtosis and Shapiro and Wilk tests. And the results are reported in Table 7. The outcomes of squamous kurtosis test reveal that all variables in the model deviate from a normal distribution. And the Shapiro-Wilk test results confirm the rejection of the null hypothesis of normal distribution. Based on these findings, the use of quantile is justified since this technique is not affected by data distribution. Before looking at the results of panel quantile regression, it should be stressed that the two-time dummies were not included in the estimations because, as was earlier mentioned, this technique is not affected by extreme or singular events. So after this brief note, we can now look at the findings in Table 8, and we can conclude that the panel quantile outcomes mirror the estimates of fixed effect OLS in terms of signs for all indicators. However, in terms of statistical significance, some differences should be highlighted, namely the lack of statistical significance of financial development index in the highest quantile, and the lack of statistical significance of THS-LCIPC and TLS-LCIPC in the 10th quantile. After exposing the results of both methodologies, Figure 1 summarizes the effect of each explanatory variable on renewable energy consumption to facilitate their interpretation and to draw the main conclusions that I will present in the next slide. So at this point, the main conclusions of this study are the main contributions to the literature and the main results obtained. First, the main contributions include the analysis of the magnitude of the tourism investment's impacts on renewable energy consumption, the use of both ordinary least squares with fixed effects and a panel quantile regression to explore the relationship between tourism and renewable energy consumption. Since most authors who focused on this relationship have only examined the causality between both, and the examination of the role of tourism specialization in mediating the relationship between tourism capital investment and renewable energy consumption. The second main conclusion are the results obtained, namely the positive and statistically significant impact of tourism capital investment on renewable energy consumption in the European Union across all estimations, meaning that it can be an important driver of energy transition in this region, and also the positive coefficient presented by the interaction term THS-LCIPC and the opposite sign exhibited by the interaction term TLS-LCIPC, which means that the level of specialization indeed affect the impacts of tourism capital investment on renewable energy consumption in the European Union, with the effects being more pronounced in tourism highly specialized nations and weaker in lowest tourism specialized countries. As you can observe in this slide, we also present below each main result a set of possible explanations for the previously obtained outcomes. But as I said, this is a working paper, so at this point we are still working on that. So thank you for your attention, and please feel free to ask any question that may arise from this presentation.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. So I'm afraid we need to, swap to the next presenter. But in any case, maybe anyone who's interested to make question or address comments to help Daniela with the work, of course, can send an email to Daniela as well. Okay. So now it's the time for Marco Michele Fortunato. Marco is a third-year PhD student in economics at the Department of Economics, Management and Business Law of the University of Bari, Aldo Moro. He actually spent a visiting year at the Universidad Carlos III de Madrid. He also a bachelor's degree in tourism management from the University of Salento, and I see we share the same master's degree in tourism economics and management from the University of Bologna, both with honors. His research is mainly concerned the economics of tourist destination. So same rules applies. Marco, you have 20 minutes and questions in the chat or by opening the microphone at the end of the presentation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Veronica. Can you see the screen?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much for having invited me at this PhD student session. I'm very happy to be here, and I would like to share with you my research about tourism and economic development and economic growth by seeing this link from another perspective. As you said, yeah, I'm a researcher at the Department of Economics and Management Business Law of the University of Bari Aldo Moro, and part of the laboratory of applied economics. And this work is shared with my supervisor, Professor Angela Stefania Bergantia. So, first of all, I would like to give you an overview of the linkage between tourism and economic development. That we know in the short run there are these 4 phases that economists have theorized. The first one where tourist arrival, so tourism arrival in destinations, and of course the steps from 1 to the 4th are not mandatory, so there should be something should happen in between. So from the tourist arrival to the tourist consumption, we have to avoid that a destination is a touring enclave, so that the tourism multiplier can stimulate the local economy through direct, indirect, and induced effect. Then, if the linkage are very strong, the tourism super multiplier allows the tourist destination to develop the tourist production structure. And then the detachment phase that we hope that destination will reach is that the economy evolves from beyond the tourism-based monoculture. But this is the link between tourism and economic development. If all these phases are, we can say, are in a destination, they take place, the linkage between tourism and economic growth in the long run takes two there are two strands of literature that are quite one against the other. The first one is tourism-led growth, where tourism can actually increase economic growth by a direct and indirect way, but we know that tourism is a non-standard type of export, so it's basically through this way. So being an export, so on the export-led channel that enhances efficiency through competition, and a capital import channel because it allows to brings inflows of foreign currencies, so to imports capital goods. Then there is the growth tourism hypothesis, where the economic development instead led tourism. Of course, these are very relevant because if one or the other hypothesis in a destination matter more, of course, we treat tourism as a strategic engine, growth engine, or not. So, in fact, the literature has evaluated this in using many time series techniques, and in many papers. Actually, tourism-led growth is validated in many countries that are tourism dependent and they're mostly developing. Instead, the growth-led tourism remains secondary, but occurring in industrialized economies. And the time series technique used has been mostly time series techniques, 80%. The level of analysis has been country level, and the regional provincial level here are there is a limited focus on that. So it's on this research gap that we would like to go, because no studies have adopted a causal inference approach to identify the true impact of tourism shock. So the question is, can tourism be used as a policy tool to enhance regional GDP growth? And how to answer this question? An ideal case that actually we found was in to find an exogenous tourism boom, and this exogenous tourism boom has been in 2016 due to the Arabic in 2016. Due to the Arab Spring, so the crisis of the North African destination, as the literature tells us that this has shifted the demand from this North European African destination to other Mediterranean destinations. For instance, Puglia. And in fact, as we see from Puglia, that is my region, sorry, is located in the south of Italy, and it experienced an exogenous tourist boom of 7%, as we can see from the graph. And so this exogenous tourist boom can be thought as, okay, if the region, the policy, the region would have stimulated tourism, would have invested in the policies to increase tourism by 7%. What would that been? The increase in the GDP. And we can answer to this question also because Puglia is a diffuse tourism development model, so that is not a tourism enclave, and the benefits are spread out of the destination. So the data set that we use are concerned the real GDP per capita variable, that is our dependent variable, and all the overnight stays that should be our independent variable, and some covariates. These are the techniques used to answer the question. And so basically the first one is to employ a causal ARIMA approach. That is a new approach in causal inference that basically it is used in the case where there is no a good counterfactual for a policy evaluation, as in the case of regions, as in the case of model or of regions of shocks that are very where that the benefits are spread out inside a wide region, a wide destination, as is tourism. And so the idea is to forecast what would have been the GDP growth without the tourism boom in 2016. So to forecast the GDP growth, the best model we found is an ARIMA 010 with these covariates that you see, and the models perform quite good to estimate it. And this is the observed and the counterfactual, the forecasted counterfactual of GDP growth. Of GDP, and we can see the difference that in black is the observed GDP. Real GDP per capita, sorry, and in blue is the forecasted GDP per capita. And so the causal effect estimated is the point causal effect is quite strong, 125 euros, the immediate rise thanks to the tourism boom, and quite a substantial cumulative causal effect. However, we see that this causal effect is very strong at the beginning, but then it seems to fade over time. So the question is, okay, tourism has had a very strong increase in GDP, but is able to help the regional economy to increase the growth rate of GDP per capita over time. That is economic. That it's what we would want to increase economic growth in the long run. And to answer this question, we employed a structural change model where growth rate of GDP per capita is explained by these covariates plus two dummies, that is a pulse dummy in 2016 and a level dummy, plus two dummies for the COVID shock. And we found that the tourist pulse is basically the tourism level is significant, but the tourist pulse is negative. What does it mean? It means that it seems that tourism has increased the level of GDP growth permanently, but it didn't change the growth rate of economic growth. So it seems that it has had a shift, a permanent shift, but it was not able to change the growth rate of GDP. So tourism acts basically as a level booster rather than a continuous accelerator. To have some more robustness checks that are more standard in the tourism-led growth literature, we employed a single equation model, actually a RDL model, where the growth rate of GDP per capita is explained by current lag level of tourism plus covariates, and actually the tourism has a positive effect in the short run, but lagged tourism values has not a significant effect on GDP growth. And actually, if we account for volatility, so we employ an arch model, the tourism effect is almost negative. Furthermore, by employing vector autoregressive model that again are standard in tourism economics literature, one standard deviation of one standard deviation increase in overnight stays leads to an increase in GDP growth, but this effect is modest and is transitory. Instead, one standard deviation in GDP growth leads to an increase in tourism overnight stays, and this response is strong and is sustained over time. These are two more robust checks about forecast error variance decomposition, where tourism explains only 13% of the FED of GDP growth. Instead, GDP growth is able to explain 21% of the forecast error of variance decomposition of tourism overnight stays. And lastly, running a Granger causality test, we see that GDP per capita actually explains tourism overnight stays and not the other way around. So, what's the conclusion of this research? Of course, the results cannot be generalized because the focus is quite limited, is on a region, but this region could be a representative case of the NUTS2 region at European level that are quite relevant share, and can be a reference also for other cases. And what we see is that tourism is able to increase permanently the growth rate of GDP per capita. That is quite a very good, of course, result, but is not able to explain a long-run economic growth. So we support the growth-led tourism hypothesis, and for this, some policy implications, of course, are that tourism can be promoted as short-run tool, but we should avoid an over-reliance on tourism and prioritize more productivity-enhancing policies that can indirectly support tourism and development. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you very much. I think it's time for say goodbye. So we'll give you some sneak peek for the next session. So first of all, thank you for everybody who attended the section. I hope you enjoy as much as I did. I think that we had a very interesting presentation from PhD candidates. So I congratulate with you, and I hope we are going to be able to do further session, PhD session in the second semester. So for now, just a preview. The first presentation of 2020, if I'm not wrong, Oriol, it's the 20th of January, and we will have David Boto Garcia from the University of Oviedo presenting. And just a reminder that indeed this session will be recorded on has actually been recorded and will be published on our YouTube channel, and anything, any news or update will be shared through the LinkedIn and our website. So again, thank you very much, Marco and Daniela, for your interesting presentation, and I hope I see you received a lot of very interesting feedback, and I hope they will be useful for your thesis.
Thank you.